From the crossroads of the Ozarks, this is PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
And I'm Sharon Gilbert. Welcome back. We're back.
We are back.
We've been traveling.
We have spent last weekend in, the Cincinnati Metro. There are sharp-eyed observers who pointed out, you never actually went into Ohio. You stayed in Kentucky. Yes,
no,
that is true.
And we kept saying, we'll be at the airport, which is in Kentucky.
Cincinnati-Northern Kentucky.
It's
airport,
a really nice airport.
It really is. We were very happy going through the airport. We love the Springfield-Branson National Airport. 10 gates, no waiting.
It's our favorite.
Yep. But you do have to connect other places if you're going somewhere. Most places. You've got a few hubs that you go to. But Cincinnati's airport, easy to navigate, very easy to get around. And we really enjoyed our time at the Mysteries of the Bible Verse conference last weekend. Made some new friends. And, of course, reconnected with Pastor Mike Hoggard, who we hadn't seen in quite a while.
He is going to be on 2 upcoming episodes of Unraveling Revelation, because you interviewed him about aliens.
Right. Actually,
in disclosure.
We're going to feature that a couple of ways because, it was interesting content.
It's too good.
Yeah. He gave a couple of talks on the UFO/alien phenomenon and its connection to the Bible. Really interesting stuff. He talked about the main types of so-called aliens seen by contactees or witnessed by contactees and how they relate to entities mentioned in the Bible. Mm-hmm. So Nordics, Greys, reptilians.
Yeah, it's really good. And yes, this does have something to do with end times prophecy, which is what we talk about in Unraveling Revelation. It's all about unveiling the final plan of Jesus Christ and why he came in the first place, why he's coming back. So many things to talk about in Unraveling Revelation. We will never reach the bottom of that well. That well, yeah. Exactly.
So that'll be, and also I'll take the full interview and feature it on A View from the Bunker in a couple of weeks.
Oh, good.
Actually, next weekend.
We love Mike and Lisa, I think is his wife's name.
Yep.
I only met her the one time, but boy, nice people. And they just live up not up the road,
a few
so to
hours
speak,
up the road.
Up in Festus, Missouri.
Yeah.
We lived close to there for a while.
Right, in West County, St. Louis. So a lot closer then than we are now, but we did see him and really had a good conversation. So that will be coming up.
It will, and if you want to watch that and know that you're going to find it, download our app.
Absolutely. It brings all of our content right to you, bypasses the gatekeepers of big tech, and you'll find it at... a couple places, pidradio.com/app or gilberthouse.org/app, which is sort of our global web hub of our burgeoning media empire.
And the websites are back up.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too. I know if you've gone to our website in the last couple of weeks, you probably got a notice from your browser saying this site is not private or some such thing. We were migrating servers. Or it was gone for a while because we were migrating servers. We didn't change hosting companies, but we needed to move servers because the software on the existing server was reaching end of life. Yeah,
he's grumpy.
It kept getting overwhelmed. Kept getting notices saying your CPU is running at 95% capacity. Yeah. You need to do something to.
So we upgraded.
We upgraded, and newer software. This will run at least through 2029. I'm told. We'll see, but hopefully we don't have to do this again for 5 years. Yeah,
that's one of those dates we talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know. Well, we'll continue planning beyond 2029, but we'll see what happens. So anyway, then after we got everything moved, then there was an issue with the security certificate. This is a new thing in the last few years where you got to have an encrypted connection because so much commerce is done online. You don't want your information leaking out. So we had to modify the
my information leaks out of my ears all the time.
So that's been fixed. So the websites are now fine, they're uploaded, they're faster, and they're secure. So gilberthouse.org, pidradio.com, or various and sundry others. We got 12 websites.
We really do. And here's the truth. We try to keep everything as inexpensive as possible. But this has been one of those years where costs are going up for us. We got the barn built. We're so grateful to you for that. We never could have done it without you. Right. So if no one else ever donated $1, we have achieved a lot because of your generosity.
Amen to that.
Like I say, our costs went up. Boy, the tax bill this year. We always have our taxes done in the fall. So it was the amount of, she said you have to send in X amount of dollars. And the Lord will provide that, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
and he did.
And he did. He absolutely did. And it was partly due because we claim we are honest.
Yeah.
We're honest. If we receive $1 from you as a gift,
we claim it as income.
We claim it as income.
Because we know let's just not being paranoid or anything. We don't want any potential issues with government investigators or the IRS coming in and saying, hey, what's this? We'll be upfront. We'd rather overpay taxes.
So in the fall, when she does our taxes and looks at all the deductions, we're praying we get some of that back. But if you feel led, and only if you feel led to donate $1 or $2, we really appreciate it.
Amen to that. And we are grateful. We don't take any of it for granted. I've fallen behind on sending out thank you notes just because we've just hit a busy season. But please know that we receive them and we are grateful for your support.
You can go through PayPal. You can go through Stripe. You can also just send us a check. Mm-hmm. And I think all of that information is there at gilberthouse.org/donate.
Correct. So, well, a lot to talk about in a couple of weeks since we went away.
Way more
we spent a few days with Sharon's sisters and nieces and nephews in Indiana. That was
cinnamon rolls.
Oh my goodness!
Amish cinnamon rolls. They put potatoes in them. They're
really?
Super. Yes, they put potatoes in them. Not potato water. That's what I thought she was saying. No, it's potatoes.
Ancient
and it
Amish
makes them
secret.
Super moist.
Yeah, those were really, really delicious.
Whoa. So yes, Derek and I are now trying to back off on the amount of sugar that we consumed over the last few days.
Uh-huh.
It's a lifetime of sugar.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've taken off about 2.5 of the 4 pounds I gained while we were gone.
I've lost about 3 of the 5 I gained, so 2 more to take off.
Right.
They'll come off too.
Well, anyway, while we were out of pocket and in Kentucky and Indiana, I just want to touch on this because this, again, speaks to what we're seeing with end times prophecy. The Israeli hostage rescue a couple of weekends ago.
Yeah.
They went into Nuzirat. That's probably not the correct pronunciation, but that's as close as I can get. In central Gaza, rescued 4 hostages that have been held for more than 8 months. And in the ensuing firefight, there are different claims as to how many Palestinian Arabs were killed in the exchange of fire between the Israeli forces. And this was a joint operation between the IDF, Shin Bet, which is the Internal Security Service, and the Israeli police. So they had operatives from each of those 3 services cooperating. They went into Gaza in civilian vehicles dressed as civilians. Did it during the day. They knew where these 2 buildings were. And in the ensuing firefight, as they tried to extricate themselves from Gaza, anywhere from 100 to 250 people were killed. And the world, including a number of prominent government officials from foreign governments, were condemned Israel for the raid. How dare you kill 200 people to rescue 4? And because the images coming out from Gaza are horrific. You see these civilians, including some children, who died in the exchange of fire.
Well, that's why the Hamas put these hostages in civilian areas.
Exactly
in a
right.
civilian home, in a doctor's home.
A doctor's home, and his son, who happened to be a journalist and editor for Al Jazeera, the Palestine Chronicle, and also a spokesman for the Ministry of Labor for Hamas in Gaza. But this is a guy who's a journalist for Al Jazeera.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure he writes fair and balanced pieces.
Oh, sure. But that's the thing to remember about this. Hamas deliberately placed the hostages, and these are not the only ones who've been held in civilian homes. We've heard other stories, some who've been released, some who are just reporting on what they knew from their time in captivity, that civilians in Gaza are being used to hold the hostages. Why would Hamas do that? Because Hamas benefits from Palestinian Arabs being killed and wounded, because then they can display that video and those images around the world, and you get well-meaning, we'll be gracious and say well-meaning people in the West saying, this is horrible, Israel should not have done this. Let's forget then that Hamas, dressed as civilians and having used the expansion of work permits under the previous administration, the Lapid-Bennett government, to go into these communities in the South and conduct surveillance, intelligence, collect intel. Dead Hamas terrorists found after October 7th were found with maps, very detailed maps of the communities that they were attacking.
Yes, they'd been spying on the Israeli families for whom they worked.
Right. They think that you're coming over to do maintenance work or yard work, farm work, whatever. And they were, in fact, spying. Okay, dog in this house, weapons are kept here, here's the police station, that sort of thing. But when pointing this out on social media, there are some who'll say, well, yes, okay, Hamas committed war crimes when they did that, but Israel's doing the same thing. Like, so wait a minute. So what you're saying then is that if Hamas places hostages amongst civilians, they are then essentially off limits because there is no way then to rescue them without the high probability of civilian casualties.
Mm-hmm. And if your child were being held, wouldn't you want that child rescued?
Oh, no, not if it meant committing a war crime. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I think anyone whose child was in that situation, or husband or wife, would say, do whatever it takes to get them back.
Mm-hmm. And young women who are being held this way are being essentially made into slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not talking about just doing manual labor.
No, not just cooking and cleaning. There's much more going on. So the world's response to Israel's rescue of those 4 hostages, once again, makes it very clear. As we've said before, I could not imagine 1 year ago, I could not have imagined a scenario that would bring the whole world together against Israel saying, you've gone too far, you're not stopping, we're going to. The majority of Israelis, 70% of Israel are Israeli Jews. There are a lot of them that don't like Benjamin Netanyahu, but more than 2/3 now agree, and this is a radical shift from just 2 years ago, more than 2/3 now agree, if I remember the poll correctly, that they cannot live peacefully side by side with a Palestinian Arab state.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get that high a percentage agreeing there, you're crossing a lot of political boundaries.
Very much so. Well, you said there are a lot of them who don't like Netanyahu.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that most of those individuals live in Tel Aviv, and I'm calling it Tel Aviv intentionally instead of Tel Aviv because it is the tail wagging the Israeli dog.
Yeah. As our Orthodox Jewish friends in Israel tell us, there are 2 Israels. There's Tel Aviv and then everything else.
Yeah, and Tel Aviv has been the center of decision-making by the West for a long, long time.
Right.
It's an entirely different world in Tel Aviv. So, yeah. Also, one of the rescued hostages has gone on record, Andrei Kozlov, says, quote, I'm home from Gaza, lots of hostages still there. He's gone to Tel Aviv to tell the government about going to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
That's where the Knesset is.
Exactly.
He's gone
That's
to
where
Tel
the Prime Minister
Aviv
is.
to be in a big rally. I'll say again, Tel Aviv, right? Wagging the Israeli dog. Not that Israel is a dog. It's just a metaphor.
No, a metaphor, yeah.
But if you've never seen the movie
Wag
the Dog, you really have to see it. But yes, he's saying that a deal must be struck. And he also is part of the crowd calling for early elections. That means get rid of Bibi.
Get rid of Bibi, right. Benny Gantz, who was a member of the War Cabinet, 3 voting members. It was Netanyahu, Gantz, and Yoav Gallant, the Minister of Defense. Gantz has resigned in protest over the way Netanyahu is handling things. But Gantz is leader of the opposition. His National Unity Party wants to replace Likud as the dominant party in the next Knesset. His party was not part of the majority coalition that Netanyahu put together in the Knesset, so Gantz stepping aside is not going to bring down the government. It was kind of expected, as we learned from Caroline Glick, who writes for the Jewish News Service, and whose columns are picked up and shared quite a bit on the internet. Gantz has been a pawn for the Biden White House for quite some time.
Yes, and pawn is the correct word.
Gantz was tasked.
He doesn't see himself as a pawn, of course.
No, of course not. He just wants to be the prime minister. Yeah, but he's the pawn of Western elites inside the Beltway. Gantz was tasked, and this was confirmed by emails that were and WhatsApp messages that were obtained by Channel 14 in Israel, which is like their version of Fox News, that a protest leader who's leading a lot of the street protests in Israel said that Gantz was supposed to bring down the government last fall, and he didn't. Then he was given a deadline of New Year's Day. That didn't happen. March 15th, that didn't happen. You might remember a few months ago, Gantz was summoned to D.C. Basically, that was to be told by the White House, your services are no longer required. And that's when the protests to oust Bibi in Israel really began. And this protest leader, whose name I forget, actually told his WhatsApp followers that he would rather see Israel as a colony of the United States than leave the right wing, meaning Netanyahu, in power.
A Jewish man would say that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And here's the irony. I see a lot of alternative media, including some prominent professing Christians, who are of the opinion that Israel controls American foreign policy. I've been reading a book, and we've been discussing it over the past couple of weeks as I'm finding things that just shock me. A book that was published 30 years ago, and I heard references to it in a podcast I used to listen to called For the Record, hosted by Dave Emery, because he had one of the co-authors on his program fairly regularly, John Loftus. He's a former DOJ prosecutor who back in the late 80s was given access to declassified files that revealed the extent of American investment in 1930s Germany, and how it was covered up by the Dulles brothers, Allen, who went on to head up the CIA, and John Foster, who was the Secretary of State, both of them under President Eisenhower in the 1950s. They were lawyers with Sullivan and Cromwell, which is a very well-connected law firm to this day in Washington, D.C. Many of their clients, both in the oil industry and the banking industry, heavily invested in German industry in the 1930s. Of course, that would have been really, really inconvenient for them after World War II. And so the Dulles brothers were very active in hiding that information, but also bringing former German intelligence officers into the CIA under Reinhard Gehlen.
One of them really surprised me.
Well, yeah. And the reason I'm reading this book, and the book, by the way, is called The Secret War Against the Jews, published in 1994 by
highly recommend
John Loftus and Mark Aarons. That's Aarons.
I'd recommend anything by John Loftus.
Yes. Very, very well done. And one of the intelligence assets, what they reveal, a number of things, and we could do a whole program just on that book. But basically, what my takeaway is this, that rather than Israel or the Jews controlling American foreign policy, Israel has been essentially, their domestic policies have been dictated by the extent of American support.
Mm-hmm.
And American support has often not been there. We didn't help them in 1948 during the War for Independence. We didn't help them in the Suez Crisis, 1956. We turned our back on them in 1967. The USS Liberty incident, the NSA was spying on Israel and giving the intel to Egypt.
That's what was really going on.
That's what was really going on. But one of the disclosures in that book that really shocked both of us was finding out that Robert Maxwell, former publisher in the UK and the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, the consort and associate of Jeffrey Epstein, single-handedly managed to arrange through intelligence contacts.
By saying that name, those names, you've probably just, okay, we're going to
shadow ban this episode. Managed to arrange
the app
for the government of Czechoslovakia in 1947-48 to funnel weapons that the Israelis needed to win the war for independence, because the Arabs, through the Arab Legion, which was headed up by Jordan, and the local Arab militias, they were getting all the weapons they wanted from Great Britain, from France, from the United States.
Yeah.
We were selling in, but we wouldn't sell anything to the Zionists in Israel. So, it's
Maxwell was Jewish.
And Maxwell was Jewish. His real name was Lev Hoch, H-O-C-H. And Hawk, maybe?
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know how the Czechs would pronounce it.
Me neither. I studied German, but in German, it means high.
Right. He, Maxwell, that is, fought with a Czech brigade in France, and after they were in danger of being overrun by the Germans, they begged the British government for evacuation, and the Brits left of this 4,000-man unit. They left a lot of them in France, mostly the ones who were Jewish. And so facing capture by Germans and having some idea of what Germans in World War II were doing with Jews, Lev Hoch changed his name to Robert Maxwell on the spot and was admitted onto the boat.
Oh, no. In Czech, it means boy.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting?
So he was evacuated to Britain and thus began his career. He managed to get into the British military, got into intelligence, and was an intelligence operative. But like many intelligence officers, Jewish intelligence officers during the 30s and 40s, in the U.S., in Great Britain, in Germany, and in the Soviet Union, their loyalties were to the Zionist cause of establishing an independent Israel. But they were... Anyway, we could go on, but that book...
It's pronounced Hoke.
Hoke, okay.
Yeah.
Lev Hoke, a.k.a. Robert Maxwell.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it meaning boy, but also an expression that means high. So I don't know.
So the bottom line is that there's a much more nuanced history of what happened leading up to the independence of Israel in the 1930s and 40s than we've been taught. And this idea that the Jews control our foreign policy is not really accurate. And there are a lot of things that happen outside, out of public sight that have resulted in where we are to this day. So anyway, but we're at a point in history now with especially with what's happened since that hostage rescue, where you can see the world saying you're committing genocide and you're not stopping. So we're going to come in and stop you.
I have said for a long time that we are repeating the build-up to World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And because World War II was just a continuation of World War I, and World War I was a continuation of many of the Ottoman battles and wars fought within the last 50 years or so in the 19th century. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire now wants to build itself back up again.
Yeah.
The resurrection of the Ottoman Empire. So keep an eye on Turkey.
Yeah, to that end, the Turks have just signed a $23 billion deal to buy F-16s from the U.S.
Now, I want to tell you, those of you who are listening, and you may have heard us talk about F-16s in Turkey before, F-16s in Turkey has been a story in the headlines for years.
Right.
So are we finally shipping them, or are they buying more?
I'm not sure. We keep dangling them out there as bait.
Yeah, but Erdogan he does not really have the U.S. interests at heart.
No, he does not. He sees himself, rightly, as the gateway between Asia and Europe.
And so we're going to arm him?
Yeah. Turkey, by the way, the foreign ministers mentioned that they want to join BRICS.
Yeah.
Or BRICS Plus now.
Yeah.
That's the economic bloc. Brazil, Russia, India, China. So India and China, right there, you got 3.5 billion people. Russia, you've got the UAE, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, which is offered membership. They're still contemplating it. But between the Saudis, the Gulf Arab states and Russia, you've got a huge chunk of the world's petrochemical wealth.
Since you just mentioned that, there was a story going around the last few days that OPEC wants to go off the petrodollar. Is that true?
Well,
sort of?
Yes, sort of. This was something I caught, and I thought, that could spell the end of the U.S. dollar, because as the story goes, back in the early 1970s, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, so unpegged the dollar's value from the value of gold, that allowed fiat currencies, the value of the U.S. dollar to float as though it's just one more commodity, which it is. But according to the belief of many, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia around 1974 signed a deal that would allow for a 50-year deal that would allow for that required Saudi Arabia to sell all of its oil in U.S. dollars, which meant that anyone wanting to buy oil from the Saudis would have to have U.S. dollars in reserves, foreign currency reserves, so they could make the exchange. And with Saudi Arabia allowing that 50-year deal to expire, and then sell oil in rupees or rubles or kwatlus, then the demand for U.S. dollars by foreign governments would decline. And suddenly you'd have all these extra dollars sloshing around foreign currency markets, which would depress the value of the dollar, which would mean it would take more of them to buy the stuff that we need at the store. In other words, inflation would hit with a vengeance. Turns out that this is really exaggerated. that there was never any formal agreement signed. There was a short-term 5-year deal signed in 1974. It's just that, but they kind of kicked the can down the road. Yeah, we'll keep doing it. But it never required Saudi Arabia to sell exclusively in U.S. dollars. They were selling in British pounds, for example, a large portion of their oil.
Now, theoretically, with that being said, our dollar should be pegged to the price of oil. You would think.
You would think.
And yet oil can be at its all-time high,
right.
And our dollar can be really weak.
But it was not a pegging of value to it. It was just requiring...
No, I understand that. Yeah. But in the trading market of currencies around the world, one would think, well, we have to be careful with that dollar because that's how Saudi Arabia sells their oil. But as you say, it's not only in dollars. So is this one of those, we're going to make a deal with you, but then not really keep the deal?
I think it's just somebody reading a headline and not really understanding the underlying actual facts and then freaking out about it because it's clickbait.
Nobody ever does that.
Oh, yeah. We've even gotten caught on a couple of those things. But anyway, so if you're seeing stories floating, in fact, I even tweeted this out over the last couple of days, and so I'll have to kind of follow up on that. Because I tweeted a story. End of the petrodollar.
Well, sure. I mean, you can only go by what the news says, but then you did your due diligence and you began to dig into it, because if it's ending this year, then yes, that does seem like a time to panic, but don't.
It don't, yeah. Now, the dollar's share of global reserves, foreign currency reserves, is declining, and it has been for some time. China is reducing its dependence on it, and the fact that the federal government, the U.S. government, uses the dollar as a punitive weapon against governments that don't do what we want. A lot of governments are just naturally saying, well, let's reduce our exposure to the dollar so the deep state in D.C. can't tell us what to do. Or if they do tell us what to do and they try to, put sanctions on us, it won't hurt as badly. So, but still, there is no other foreign currency that comes close to the U.S. dollar in terms of currency reserves around the world. The reason this is important to us as Americans is that the government has printed literally trillions of dollars since the pandemic began. All the Biden bucks that were handed out, the stimmy checks that were sent out. You're not doing any work. We were still drawing paychecks, and we were getting free money from the government, except it's not really free.
We just got it. We didn't ask for it.
Yeah.
It just arrived.
We're still working. Why are you sending us free money? I can see people who've been locked out of their jobs because of the overreaction to the virus needing help. But there were a lot of people who didn't need it, and a lot of us got those checks anyway. But now suddenly you've got all that extra currency in circulation. Economics 101. The value of something is determined by its relative scarcity to something else. When you flood the market with more dollars, they're worth less, which means it takes more to buy stuff. Prices aren't going up. It's just the dollar is worth less. The saving grace for Americans is that so many international trade agreements are denominated and conducted in U.S. dollars that there is demand out there by foreign governments to hang on to U.S. dollars, which keeps the supply from exploding. So that's why people were kind of freaking out when they say, end of the petrodollar. Oh, Saudi Arabia is going to take other currencies. And so, no, it's not quite that bad. And since the U.S. and Saudi Arabia are on the verge of signing a defense treaty, there will probably be more cooperation. The Saudis will probably continue selling a lot of their oil in dollars for years to come.
The U.S. has been helping, and then we're going to have to go to a break probably. The U.S. has been helping out with the Yemeni war. And our ships have been there prior to October 7. We had ships down there that were fending off Yemen rockets and small boats and things like that. And it's just had to get even bigger. We've got a number of ships down there.
Including the USS Eisenhower aircraft carrier.
The Eisenhower group is a big group.
Yeah. So there's some questions about what exactly happened. Where is the Eisenhower now? See if we can look that up over the break here real quick. And also want to talk about Ukraine and Wanderin' Joe.
Wanderin' Joe. Got to talk about NIPRGPT.
Yes.
GPT. And also, speaking of assets off the coast of Yemen, the pier, the U.S. asset, the pier that was built there in Gaza, well, it's going to be dismantled.
It's reached end of life already, huh?
Well, it's gone through a storm. It's been attacked, went through another storm, and now they're saying, well, there's more storms coming. Surprise, surprise. The Mediterranean has storms.
Waves?
What?
No. Oh, so much more coming ahead on PID Radio.
Giants, gods, dragons, they're all real. We may not see them with our natural eyes, but their handiwork is evident in what's happening in the world around us, the spiritual warfare taking place.
It is so true. It's obvious in Israel, but worldwide. Historically, we've seen this happen. And we want you to get excited about the Old Testament and the New and the giants, gods, and dragons within it, because your kids need this information. So do you.
Yes. We're living in prophetic times. Help make sense of it with our special offer through July. Our book, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, which takes a fresh look at end times prophecy. My book's Bad Moon Rising, about the spiritual forces behind Islam. And Last Clash of the Titans, the overlap between what we were told is Greek mythology and the Bible. And our DVD, based on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. All of this, an $80 value for just $45 plus shipping and handling. Now through July, only at our online store, gilberthouse.org/store.
Shall we begin? Let's begin.
Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we want to remind you once again, please download our app.
Yes, you'll find it 2 places, pidradio.com/app. But better yet, go to gilberthouse.org/app, because gilberthouse.org is where you'll find all of our stuff, including the store. Also, a link to our streaming video site, which we keep forgetting to talk about.
We do. We're just terrible about that. Also, you get to see where we're traveling in the next years.
Yes, and we will be in Sparta, Missouri this weekend. We'll tell you about that before the end of this program. But that's if you're in the Ozarks, please consider joining us for a full weekend of Gilbert's.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be so much fun. Not because it's a full weekend of Gilbert's, but because the Wades are so nice.
Ginny and Alec are wonderful people. His Call Ministries, Joy Stevenson, who helps coordinate the events there when they bring people out to speak and minister. So we're looking forward to that. They've become good friends.
They've become really good friends, so we love going out there. So if you're in the area, please consider, you need to get your reservation in soon, though, because they only have so much room. The room only holds maybe 50, 60 people.
I think we may have had as many as 75 there, but it's pretty
small.
It's an intimate gathering.
It's
so
in the
we'll
basement of a really nice lodge home. But still, it's reasonably small, intimate. It's lovely. Also, we traveled to Israel, and we would love for you to join us.
We've got another tour planned. As of this point, we have no plans to delay.
We will if we have to.
We will if we have to. We've had to already. So that's why our tour this year was the Solidarity Mission rather than a full-blown tour.
The dinging is Joe Horn, isn't it?
It is.
We put our devices on Do Not Disturb.
And somehow Joe breaks through the defenses.
Even though his number is not on the list of, okay, we'll take this one. It's your mom and maybe one other. That's it.
And
Nicole
you.
and me.
Right.
That's it.
Joe somehow gets right through.
We don't
I'm
know
not
how
quite sure.
He's got
he needs to talk to the military about how to break through electronic defenses.
Do you think that he is behind NIPRGPT?
I don't know. You told me about this the other day, and I think this is really interesting because GPT, obviously ChatGPT is, what is generative something?
Yeah.
Anyway,
there's been GPT 1, 2, 3, and I think it's up to 4 now.
Oh, general purpose technology? No, that's in economics. What does GPT stand for? Generative pre-training transformer? No.
That actually might apply too, but it's essentially a chat program.
No, that is what it means. Generative pre-trained transformers.
Yeah, so what?
I know, transformers.
No wonder Joe got through. He always has that Optimus Prime voice.
He does, yes.
So he might be behind this. NIPRGPT.
NIPR is the interesting part of that acronym because it's Nippur, which is the name of the city in ancient Mesopotamia, Babylonia, where the temple of the father of their gods, Enlil, was located. That's where Ezekiel saw his vision. He mentions the Kivar Canal, the vision over the Kivar. The vision
mentions
I had at the first
it quite a number of times.
8 times in the book of Ezekiel, he mentions that. The Kivar Canal.
Why?
Yeah. Well, that canal ran right through Nippur, right next to the temple of Enlil, which is called the House of the Mountain, the E-Kur, the Mountain House.
Mm-hmm. Enlil's got other names.
He does, like El of the Canaanites, but also Molech, Dagon, Saturn, Kronos.
Possibly a current god who is worshipped by a large percentage of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Molech. Yeah.
Well, that and another one. But.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we won't name it. But NIPRGPT, I don't know if the military are pronouncing it Nippur, but it sure likes it. And let me tell you what NIPR stands for. It stands for Non-Classified Internet Protocol Generative Pre-Training Transformer.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Or NIPRGPT.
Yeah. Generative Pre-Training Transformer.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out
But why Nippur?
The R, well, NI, non-classified internet. The PR probably comes from protocol.
Yeah.
So it seems forced.
It does. Why not just NIPGPT?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. But this is a tool announced by the Air Force and the Space Force jointly.
Yeah, that's Space Force, an interesting branch of the military because Space Force is trying to take it's like one of those gangs that's trying to take your territory. We want to take your funding because we want to take over what you're doing.
There are turf wars and have been for many, many years funding inside.
Space Force they're gobbling up as much as they can.
Yeah. Well, the goal, according to spokespersons, is to present a chat bot for Air Force and Space Force servicemen and women to help them learn how AI can advance access to information and determine if generative AI is necessary within the Department of the Air Force. Okay, you're going to ask the AI, is AI necessary? Oh, yeah, we are essential. You got to have, in fact, we need more servers. We need better processors. We need
Nippur,
more power.
Am I over the target? Oh, yeah, yes, certainly you are. So should I drop the bomb now? No, that's just what they'd expect you to.
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. Hal? Open the pod bay doors,
They're
Hal.
creating hell.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they are doing.
Yeah. The announcement from the Chief Information Officer of the Air Force, quote, now is the time to give our airmen and guardians, that's what the Space Force guys are called.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not sailors, they're not soldiers, they're guardians.
They're guardians of the galaxy.
Yep.
Are they raccoons? Everybody's doing the raccoon.
The flexibility to develop the necessary skills in parallel. There are multiple modernization efforts going on right now across the federal government and within the Department of the Air Force to get tools in the hands of the workforce. This tool is another one of those efforts. Yeah, but interestingly, naming it Nippur, or another way of transliterating the Sumerian into English would be Nibiru.
It's been translated that B's and P's are interchangeable.
Typically in Akkadian, you would find the P sound like Apsu, but in Sumerian, it would be Abzu. So Nibiru is the Sumerian for Nippur.
Well, like Paneas or Panyas is Banyas in Arabic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to ask why they wanted to call it that. And because you and I and Tom Horn and many others have been talking about the ghost in the machine for a long, long time. The idea that the electric and electronic aspects of these chat bots and algorithms and AIs could be inhabited or controlled. You and I have talked about the black box before, and I sometimes get pushback as to you from people that say, no, there's no black box. They all understand.
Yeah.
No, we've talked to high-level programmers.
Right.
Award-winning programmers, and they say, yeah, pretty much is.
I know. When we've posted things like this on social media and there's been pushback, well, just because you don't understand how it works. No, the guys that we've talked to who are responsible for testing these things out, like Dr. Hugo de Garis, who was a leading developer of AI at the Human Brain Institute at Xiamen University in China.
Yeah, it was,
he said, look, we were doing great engineering, but lousy science because we'd put the input in, we'd get output. If we didn't like the output, we'd change the input, but we didn't understand.
You put the input in, you get the output.
That's right. You change the parameters and shake them all about. It's
the hokey pokey.
Yeah, and Dr. de Garis is not the only one to say this. They literally, this is not us as lay people. These are the people responsible for building these things, saying we don't know what happens inside the neural network.
All we know is that we put in a trial run of code. We see how it turns out. It reminds me a bit of hybridization. When you're trying to cross breeds or species is a bad idea, but it has been done. But say you're trying to get a dog with a long snout.
Mm-hmm.
You keep finding long-snouted dogs and breeding them together, and eventually you get a dog with a really long snout, or sadly, with a really short one. Those really flat-faced dogs, pugs and many others, they cannot breathe well.
Mm-hmm.
So I would rather have a long-nosed dog. It's healthier for the dog. Those dogs that have already been, created, bred that way, they need lots of loving and wonderful owners, wonderful peeps to take care of them. So if you get a chance to adopt one of those animals, understand they will have some breathing issues, and they're probably going to slobber.
Right, yeah. A lot of that breathing's coming through the mouth. Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of AI, there is an AI candidate on the ballot in the general election in the UK next month.
A candidate?
Running for, well, not really, but sort of. Yeah, it's a Sussex businessman named Steve Endicott is on the ballot alongside non-AI candidates, but the AI is called AI Steve. But Steve Endicott is his human who will actually take his place in Parliament if he's elected, but he says he's going to do whatever AI Steve tells him to do. He said in an interview, Endicott said, AI Steve is the AI co-pilot. I'm the real politician going into Parliament, but I'm controlled.
He's the flesh and blood controlled by an AI.
That's right. Now, Endicott is the chairman of a company called Neural Voice. They create personalized voice assistants for businesses in the form of an AI avatar.
I see. He's running to promote his business.
Yeah, you betcha. Don't know what party he's running on. Who is he representing?
I think this is a foreshadowing of things to come, though. Yeah,
he ran in 2022 as a Tory, unsuccessfully, received less than 500 votes. So his own party is called Smarter UK, not registered in time for this year's election, but he's running anyway, and he's getting some attention from the media.
Sure.
But yeah, my AI co-pilot will make the decisions. I'm afraid you can't do that, Steve. But you're right. I think this is a foreshadowing of things to come. Well, why not? I mean, the humanoid chatbot, was it Sophia?
Mm-hmm.
Why not? If she wasn't she declared a human or a person under the law?
She may be a person. I don't know that she's a human under the law. I mean, corporations are persons under the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's been declared a citizen of Saudi Arabia.
Makes her a person.
Right. So watch for that to happen in other
Can she
countries.
Drive? Is she allowed to drive?
The Saudis now allow women to drive, yeah. Mohammed bin Salman is...
Silicon-based women? Seriously, though,
yeah.
Elon Musk tweeted this at X, posted it at X. I think you can say tweet.
Yeah.
That his electric cars, his Teslas, can become your remote Uber. In other words, if you buy one, you can hire it out as a driverless taxi.
I see.
As a robo-taxi.
Yeah. No.
Just like in the movie Terminator.
Mm-hmm. This idea will gain acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm the tail end of the baby boom, and I'm 62. And as we get older, there's Joe again.
Is he laughing?
He'll have to get a credit on this week's episode.
He always does.
Yeah. And as we age, driving becomes more of a challenge. I don't like driving at night so much anymore. I can still do it. I buy the brightest headlights I can get. So if you're coming the other way on that country road, you better hope I turn back down to low beams in time. But it's not as easy as it was when I was in my 20s and 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And as I get older, I'm sure it's just, the way we age. So being able to have a means of transportation without having to be the one responsible for, eye-hand coordination is a thing. So we're going to see more driverless vehicles on the road. Being able to send trucks out on the road where you don't have to account for a human driver having to stop and rest and sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Just put it out there. It only has to stop to refuel. That would be, we're going to see more of this.
Let's imagine that you are retired, as you say, and you when your mother first lived in the community where she now lives, this retirement center, she was in her little cottage. She had to rely upon someone driving her, because she didn't have a car, to her doctor's appointments or to the hairdresser or to the Walmart or wherever she wanted to go. She's got a friend who was doing that.
Right.
You would often do it. Sometimes I would do it. But if she'd been able to just hit a button and the car came to her.
Right. And then just tell the car, take me to Walmart or whatever. That would have been very, very handy for her.
These vehicles right now, they can't always tell the difference between a stationary object and a living object.
And if there's not enough contrast between the color of the vehicle and, say, the sky, there have been cases where
cerulean blue.
Yeah, where Teslas on autopilot have slammed into the back end of white trucks because it couldn't detect the truck against the sky. So the human brain, for all of its limitations and flaws, still can process things in real time in a different way that's more conducive to life, human life, than these autopilots, the AIs running the vehicles. But as they develop, they probably will get better at that. So we'll probably see more of those on the road.
Well, you and
Joe, recording podcast now. Your text.
No, he's fine. Let him keep it. It makes him happy. When we were traveling this past weekend, we rented a car at the airport in Kentucky and drove to my family in southern Indiana. It was about an hour and a half away, and spent a few days with them. Well, the car had Apple Play in it. And a lot of these cars, you can connect your phone. Well, Siri was telling us things like, get in the middle lane, slow down up ahead.
Yeah.
Derek. That's coming.
But
when she will be customizable.
Right.
Derek.
But you have to watch because the maps aren't always up to date. Go past the next light and then turn right at the second light. It's like, there's another light there that Siri didn't know about.
You left it. Siri.
So you have to.
Now imagine the car just doing what Siri was seeing.
Right.
So the car would make a mistake.
You've reached your final destination.
Oh, yeah. Well, that day's coming.
Yeah. Well, this past week, Joe Biden once again showed why he's really should not be running for re-election. I know it's quite a left turn here, but I wanted to talk about this, not to mock Joe Biden, because I think what is going.
I really feel sorry for him.
I do too. Setting aside his morals and ethics and the fact that he and his brother James and his son Hunter apparently, based on the evidence that's been publicly available now, and now that the federal government, the Department of Justice in the Hunter Biden gun trial that just concluded with a guilty verdict this past week, admitted, the Hunter Biden laptop is legit. It's not Russian disinformation. It is real. All the stuff that's on it is actually stuff that he did. And it would appear, based on the evidence from that laptop, that President Biden and his family have been engaged in influence peddling operations at the highest levels of the U.S. government.
Yes, and that is not why I have compassion for him. I have compassion for him because, let me just finish this. He's a human being who's been put into a situation that is way beyond him, and he's being used.
Exactly.
Now, you finish what you were going to say, and then I'm going to bring up an interesting point.
Okay. I was going to say, let's set aside all of that other stuff, that there should be some accountability. There should be accountability for all
I agree,
of that.
And that's my interesting point.
Right. But you're right. I agree. And seeing family members who've gone through dementia or are going through it presently.
And many of you are dealing with that.
Yes. Yeah. This is very uncomfortable to watch. At the G7 meeting in Italy this past week, President Biden just appeared lost at times. It appeared as though some of the other G7 leaders, like Italy's Prime Minister Meloni, she had to kind of walk over and corral Joe while they were supposed to be watching a paratrooper exhibit in front of them. He just sort of wandered off.
It's as if he saw someone else to the side and was wandering off to interact with that person.
Right. The claims from the White House, because they're sending out people to do the talk shows, and no, he's sharp as a tack behind the scenes. Really? Because the Wall Street Journal just ran an article this past week saying that that's not what people inside the White House are saying. I think they're trying to prep for getting rid of him at the Democratic National Conference.
Now, because this is PID Radio, Peering into Darkness, we try to look at the spiritual aspect of things. Here's my interesting thing.
Okay.
Remember the decree of the Watchers and Nebuchadnezzar?
Oh, yeah. You'll spend 7 years living like a beast in the field.
By decree of the watchers, maybe he's just been his
I hadn't even
lifestyle
considered that.
choices, his moral choices, his pretense at being a good Catholic.
Yeah, which is a good way of putting it.
Which is claiming he's a good Christian.
Right.
Yeah, when someone says I'm a good Catholic, that doesn't always mean that they're really a good Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Being a good Catholic means you follow their few rules.
Right.
There aren't very many.
And there are other religions that are the same way. If you're, a good Seventh-day Adventist, you follow all of their rules. But that doesn't mean you're saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ.
Relationship, not religion.
Exactly. Well, hadn't even considered that possibility. But it is sad to watch because it is not fun to see a family member losing themselves, losing their personality the way people with Alzheimer's dementia do.
No, your mother is, we're watching her decline, but you and I like to think that her memories are just going up to be with Jesus.
Being stored up in heaven on ahead. So, so again, we don't say this to say, ha, gotcha, because that political game is stupid.
No, I would rather he truly have a conversion where he, the Lord appears to him or whatever it takes, and he becomes a true believer.
Amen.
Washed in the blood of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Wouldn't that be great?
It would. So, it's going to be an interesting political summer because the Democratic Party, the reason they keep propping him up out there instead of saying, okay, well, it's clear he's no longer cognitively capable to do this. The same thing happened about 100 years ago with Woodrow Wilson after he had a stroke. Mm-hmm. And Mrs. Wilson essentially ran the government through the rest of his term. No one could, it was like he was Oz, the great and powerful Oz. Nobody got to see him. But
don't
Mrs.
look behind the curtain because, there's a woman back there. Yeah,
Colonel Mandel House and Mrs. Wilson basically ran the White House during that period of his incapacity. But, it is sad, but they keep propping him up because they do not want Kamala Harris at the Resolute desk.
Amen to that. One final thing, I would like to just do a shout out to our former governor here in Missouri.
Oh, yeah. Governor John Ashcroft, former Attorney General under President George W. Bush.
God bless that man. We saw him on our last plane, the one that flew us from Kentucky back to...
From Houston back to...
from Houston. We had to connect. From Houston back to Springfield. Mm-hmm. He was sitting behind us.
Yeah, a distinguished gentleman wearing a checked shirt. And I said, that looks a lot like John Ashcroft.
And sure enough,
that is John Ashcroft.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've met him a couple of times.
Yep, we have.
I interviewed him back in 2016 when his son Jay was running for Secretary of State here in Missouri. Jay is running as a Republican for governor in the fall. He's one of 3 Republicans, and the primary's coming up in August. So had the opportunity to meet John and talk with him. Very down-to-earth, very self-effacing. Got to ask him what part he sang, because he was part of a gospel quartet in the Senate with Trent Lott and 2 other senators who I can't remember.
And he plays the piano.
Plays the piano. He got up and played and sang at Dino's 80th birthday celebration at, was it at the Mansion?
It was at the Mansion Theater. You
Branson.
and I sat next to the Bakers.
Right. Jim and Lori Baker asked us to come down, which blows my mind. I mean,
I know, when they turned and asked us,
in what reality are we? Okay, no, we've got seats. So we got to meet.
Sandy Patty was there. I got to talk to her. I used to know her many, many years ago.
You sang with her at a jingle studio.
Yeah.
So anyway, Governor Ashcroft flying commercial on this little itty bitty, one of those planes that's only got 3 seats across. 2 on one side, 1 on the other, and Governor Ashcroft riding the plane back with other. Most of the folks didn't recognize him.
No. Derek went over and said hello. I walked over, shook his hand, and told him, God bless you, sir. And we just, it was nice to see someone who was just so humble and down to earth. Yeah.
He served as a U.S. Senator from Missouri for, I forget if it was 1 or 2 terms. Then he was picked by George W. Bush to serve as Attorney General. And I know that he caught a lot of flack during the George W. Bush administration for being the Attorney General, being an outspoken conservative Christian as he was, and a genuine Christian. Governor Ashcroft was a lightning rod for a lot of stuff that was thrown at the Bush administration. But the fact is, behind the scenes, Governor Ashcroft, Attorney General Ashcroft, whatever his official title is, I guess be Attorney General because that was the highest ranking office that he held, General Ashcroft. He refused to do some things that the Bush administration wanted him to do.
He was in the hospital.
Yeah, and they approached him. They wanted him to sign off on some aspects of the Patriot Act that, gosh, who was it? It was Alberto Gonzales and
Deputy
Andy Card.
Attorney General.
Right. Alberto Gonzales, who later became the Attorney General, and the Chief of Staff, Andrew Card, approached him while he was in the hospital for some surgery. And in fact, Mr. Ashcroft at the time was no longer officially, because he was incapacitated.
So it had gone to the deputy.
And the deputy, believe it or not, the Deputy Attorney General there was James Comey, later the FBI director. And Comey had rushed to the hospital to get there before Card and Gonzalez got there, because Comey did not agree with this, continuation of certain unconstitutional aspects of the Patriot Act. So anyway,
General Ashcroft, Governor Ashcroft, whatever you want to call him, thank dear John Ashcroft for standing up for you.
And kudos to him at his age, just flying commercial. I said, just want to thank you for your service. And there I was wearing my Marginal Mysteries T-shirt, the pyramid with the rays coming out of it and shorts.
Yeah, a lot of you have commented on that. It's actually part of Southwest Radio Church's
Marginal Mysteries. Yeah. Logo designed by Micah Van Huss.
It's designed intentionally to draw in those people who are being sucked in by the New Age crowd.
But I was not dressed in business attire. I was dressed in travel attire, wearing, cargo shorts and this T-shirt. And thank you, sir, for your...
We both look kind of bedraggled.
Yeah. Anyway, John Ashcroft, it was a kind of neat to see. And again, a good man. We were happy to have seen him on that plane.
So tomorrow in VFTB.
Tomorrow, it is Iron and Myth number 30, and we talk about the sons of God.
Finally.
Yeah, I know. We kind of realized we've been through 30 episodes here since we do one a month. It's like 2.5 years in. We've not talked about the sons of God in Genesis chapter 6 yet. Who are they, and what are the arguments for and against the supernatural interpretation? So Doug Van Dorn, Judd Burton, Brian Godawa joining me tomorrow night for that discussion. And that was actually rather lengthy. Had some technical issues in it. I had to spend quite a bit of time editing last night. For some reason, Judd Burton's audio was not synced with his video.
Oh.
So I had to manually detach it and then figure out how to synchronize it with the rest of us. But it came out, and there was a couple of points there where Judd dropped out altogether. So I had to put up a, technical difficulties, please stand by screen on his quadrant.
Wile E. Coyote holding up a sign.
Yes, exactly. So, but that'll be tomorrow night on A View from the Bunker. Very much worth the time. And then next month, because we realized, okay, we've talked about the sons of God now. We haven't talked about the Nephilim. Why do we think they're giants? So that'll be next month's discussion.
Oh, my goodness. Don't forget, Dr. Judd Burton is going to be in Ohio at the Go Therefore conference.
Right. Boy, that is quite a lineup. L.A. Marzulli, Judd Burton, Carl Gallups. Joe Horn. We're finally getting him out of the Ozarks to go and speak.
That's probably why he's dinging you over and over.
What should I talk about?
Derek, can I steal your talk?
And Dr. Greg Reed talking about spiritual warfare and ritual abuse, that sort of thing.
In fact, some of you have written to us either snail mail or email and asked, or in comments, asked how you can contact someone who's in deliverance. I'll tell you what, Greg Reed is a great starting place. Also, Tom Dunn. There's a pastor in Indiana, Greg Patton, who's a good source. He's been doing this for 30-odd years. So there are people out there. Sadly, because of the late Russ Dizdar leaving us a few years ago, a lot of folks, that was their go-to. They assumed he was the only one. He's not.
Yeah.
There are others out there doing it.
So that will be quite
Vicky Joy, you probably just said that.
Vicky Joy Anderson. No, I had not, but great. And Tom Dunn, by the way, will be one of the speakers at the Go Therefore conference. He's been added to the lineup.
And of course, Mike.
Yep.
And you and I
Mike
will be
Spalding,
there.
right?
We'll talk whatever Joe doesn't take away from us.
And this one will be streamed, by the way. GoThereforeConference.com if you can't be there, so you can sign up for live streaming. By the way, we didn't find out until like the day before we were in Kentucky, yeah. So we never crossed the river.
Cincinnati, Kentucky.
The Mysteries of the Bible Verse conference was recorded, and there will be DVD sets, so you'll get a chance to see our presentations and some really good stuff at that conference.
Yeah, it was recorded by a good friend of ours. So Matt Puskarich.
Yeah.
is he's a professional. He knows his
do a
stuff.
lot of video editing. They do all the captioning for Skywatch TV.
Yeah.
And helped set up the studio at Skywatch TV as far as the lighting was concerned. Matt did a great job with that.
He knows his stuff.
So this will be a really good DVD set. You mentioned Greg Patton. His presentation was phenomenal. Had not known about Greg Patton, but like me, comes out of Top 40 Radio as a background.
It's hilarious. He was in Indianapolis, and so he and I talked about Indy for a bit. He is up in Fort Wayne, near Fort Wayne, Indiana. So Patten, I believe. So you can look that up. And again, please feel free to ask us. Derek and I are not called into deliverance ministry, but we have a lot of friends who are.
Yeah. We are we're back in the armory. We're doing the research and trying to provide the information to the folks who are on the front lines.
That's exactly what we're called to do.
His Call Ministries, this coming weekend, June 21st through 23rd. That is Friday night, Saturday morning and afternoon, and Sunday morning. Sharon and I will be speaking on the subject of the gates of hell.
Yeah, that's a charming topic. So hiscallministries.com is the website. So you need to call them as soon as possible.
Right. You can get a complete look at all of our upcoming events at our website, gilberthouse.org, or just go to the calendar section of our app. It's all there, along with the reading schedule for our Gilbert House Fellowship, our weekly Bible study, the podcast tomorrow morning. We'll be back in the Proverbs.
And by the way, because we'll be out of town next weekend, sadly, we will once again not be producing new programs, but we may find some oldies but goodies to put up there for you.
Well, yeah, I think that pretty well covers it.
Well then, yeah.
Until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for Grace and Glory Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio, or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.